My husband gifted me a watch on our anniversary, but every time I wore it, I felt uneasy and sick. I decided to sell it. The shopkeeper was stunned and said, "Where did you get this? You need to go to the authorities. This is serious." Before we move on, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. On their anniversary, Marcus gave Laura a small velvet box. Inside, resting on a soft satin lining, was a vintage timepiece. Its off-white face was framed by a thin gold border, and the worn leather strap felt incredibly smooth against the skin. "Happy anniversary, my love," Marcus whispered, his eyes full of affection. He carefully placed the watch on Laura's wrist. "I found it in a tiny shop. It reminded me of you, elegant and timeless." Laura admired the gift. The watch was stunning, exuding charm and a sense of history. She thanked Marcus, hugged him, and kissed him. His kindness had always meant the world to her. Marcus knew just how to make her feel special. That evening, Marcus was particularly loving. He cooked her favorite dinner roast chicken with rosemary, lit soft candles, and played quiet romantic tunes. They reminisced about the early days of their relationship, laughing over funny memories, and talked about their future plans. Laura felt happy and cherished. It seemed their connection was growing stronger with time. But the next day, when Laura wore the watch to work, she began feeling unwell. Started with mild dizziness and a sense of unease, like something was wrong, but she couldn't pinpoint it. Then came a slight headache. Laura thought it was just fatigue. She had been working hard, preparing for exams at the college where she taught. It was a busy time of year, and she assumed the stress was getting to her. But as the day went on, the discomfort grew. She struggled. To focus, her words began to slur, and black spots flashed before her eyes. She had to sit down. After her classes, she rushed home and immediately took off the watch. The moment it was removed, a cool calmness washed over her. The dizziness faded and her mind cleared. Could the watch really be causing this? She brushed it off as a coincidence and decided to try it again the next day. The next morning, when she put the watch on again, the symptoms returned, only worse this time. She felt weak, nauseous, and dizzy. As soon as she took the watch off, she felt better. Laura started noticing other strange things. Where the watch's clasp touched her skin, there was a slight red mark, as if her skin was reacting. She told Marcus about her symptoms, but he dismissed them. "You're just overthinking it, darling," he said with a hug. "It's probably just an allergy to the metal. If it gets worse, we'll go to the doctor." Laura felt as though Marcus wasn't taking her seriously. He always said she was being too sensitive, dismissing her concerns. But she couldn't ignore the fact that something didn't feel right. She started paying more attention to Marcus. It seemed like his behavior was changing. He was more distant, easily irritated, and often stayed late at work. When he talked on the phone, he stepped onto the balcony to whisper. Laura tried to ask him about it, but he always deflected, saying he was just tired from work. She felt a growing gap between them. One evening, when Marcus was in the shower, Laura couldn't resist and checked his phone. She knew it was wrong, but she needed to confirm her suspicions. She quickly skimmed through his call logs and messages, finding nothing unusual. Then she opened his email and found a message from an unknown address. The subject was simple: "The watch is ready, awaiting payment." A chill ran through her. What did that mean? Her heart raced as she quickly closed the email and turned off the phone. She didn't know what to think anymore from that moment on. Laura decided to investigate further. Investigation. Laura had to find out what Marcus was hiding and why the watch made her feel so ill. She felt as though her life was in danger. First step was to confide in her friend Emily, a lawyer who had always been there for her during tough times. Emily listened carefully and promised to help. "I think you need to get the watch examined," she said. "There could be something wrong with it, or worse, something dangerous." Laura agreed. She knew she needed an expert to take a look at the watch and give a professional opinion. But who could she trust? Who could she confide in about her? Suspicions, Emily, after listening attentively, frowned. Redness on your wrist, Laura. That's not something to ignore. Even if it's just an allergy, better to be safe. And your symptoms, they align too perfectly with wearing that watch. Get it checked or just sell it and get rid of it. Laura nodded, a feeling of fear beginning to tighten around her chest. Emily's words, backed by her own concerns, weighed heavily on her. You're right, Emily. I'll take it to a pawn shop to figure out what's wrong. The next day, summoning all her courage, Laura visited a small pawn shop on the edge of town. The place was simple but seemed trustworthy, with a sign reading, appraisal and purchase of watches and jewelry. She chose this shop, hoping for both confidentiality and professionalism. Inside there was the scent of old wood and polish. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged man with thick gray eyebrows and sharp eyes. His name tag read Mikey Appraiser. Laura approached the counter, trying to hide her nervousness. Hello, she said, her voice quivering. I'd like to have this appraised. She placed the vintage watch on the counter. Mikey picked up the watch, put on his glasses, and began inspecting it closely. He turned it over, studied it under a magnifying glass, and checked its inner mechanism. Laura watched, holding her breath. After several minutes, Mikey looked up, his expression shifting from focused to something more cautious. He cleared his throat as if gathering his thoughts. These watches, he began, speaking softly, have been modified. A cold chill ran down Laura's spine. Modified. What do you mean? Mikey looked at her intently. I've been working with watches for many years. These are vintage, valuable, but something has been added to them. Something ... bad. He picked up the watch again and pointed to the clasp. See this tiny seam? Something's been soldered in here very carefully. It's not a factory part. Laura leaned in, trying to see what he was pointing at. She noticed a barely visible seam, almost blending with the metal. What could it be? She asked, her panic rising. Mikey sighed. I can't say for sure without a full analysis, but I have my suspicions. Very bad suspicions. He pulled out a small tool from under the counter and carefully pried open the clasp. Inside was a tiny, hair-thin capillary. Wearing gloves, Mikey cautiously extracted it. There's something here, he said, holding it up to the light. Some kind of liquid, colorless, odorless, but I'm certain it's not water. Laura felt the world around her start to blur. What could it be? She repeated, nausea creeping up in her throat. Mikey looked her in the eyes. I'm no expert, but from my experience, this looks like a slow-acting poison. Something that would gradually worsen your health without leaving obvious traces. Laura staggered back from the counter, poison in the watch. But why? Her thoughts started to race, recalling Marcus's strange behavior, his evasiveness, and his debts. The pieces of the puzzle slowly came together, forming a terrifying picture. Have you been wearing this watch? Mikey asked, his voice full of concern. Laura nodded. Yes, every day. It was a gift from my husband for our anniversary. Mikey shook his head. You need to go to the police immediately. Trust no one. No one except the police and maybe your closest friends. Otherwise, it might already be too late. His voice was quiet, but each word felt like a judgment. Laura stood frozen, unable to speak. Her mind swirled with fragments of thoughts, memories, and suspicions. Marcus, her husband, could he really want to kill her? Seeing her distress, Mikey poured Laura a glass of water. Pull yourself together, he said. You need to act fast. Your safety comes first. Laura took a few sips, trying to steady herself. What should I do? She asked, looking at Mikey with hope. First, don't wear the watch anymore. Second, go to the police, tell them everything. Show them the watch, the capillary. They'll analyze it and determine what the substance is. Third, be careful. Don't tell anyone what you've learned, especially your husband. Laura nodded, feeling determination slowly return. Thank you. she said to Mikey. "Thank you so much. You've saved my life." Mikey shook his head. "I just did my job. Now, it's up to you. Be strong and find the truth." Laura left the pawn shop feeling utterly drained. The world around her felt strange, as if it had turned against her. The one person she trusted had become her enemy. Back home, it was as if an icy shard had pierced Laura's mind. Mikey's words, the warning about the poison, echoed in her thoughts. Marcus, her Marcus, the man she had shared everything with, could be behind this nightmare. She had to be. Sure, she couldn't let fear paralyze her. Pretending nothing was wrong, Laura tried to act as if everything was normal. Marcus greeted her with a forced smile. Asking how her dress fitting had gone the excuse she'd made to explain her absence. She responded vaguely, citing fatigue, and quickly headed for the shower. Not just to wash away the day's dust, but the growing sense of betrayal. After a tense, silent dinner, Laura excused herself, claiming a headache. She needed to act fast. Knowing Marcus could walk in at any moment, she moved swiftly but cautiously. First, she checked his computer. Marcus wasn't the most careful with security, and as she had suspected, his password was simple. His birthday at first glance. His email seemed innocent, work-related messages, bills, and greetings from colleagues. But as she dug deeper into the archives, she found emails from someone named Svetlana. The messages, dated over the past few months, were clearly personal, not professional. "I miss you. When will we see each other again?" Svetlana wrote. "Soon, my dear, we just need to wait a little longer. Everything will be sorted out and we'll be together." Marcus replied. Laura felt her cheeks flush with a mixture of pain and rage. Infidelity had hurt, but it wasn't as terrifying as the realization that this affair might be part of a more sinister plan. She copied the entire conversation, careful not to miss a single detail. Next, she checked his phone, which was more challenging. Marcus always kept it with him, ensuring it was locked. Laura remembered seeing him enter the password once when he thought she was asleep. She tried to recreate the combination in her mind, and it worked. On the phone, she found more evidence of her worst fears. Beyond the suggestive messages from Svetlana, there was a conversation with an unknown number discussing sensitive matters and promises of total anonymity. In one message, Marcus wrote, "The main thing is that it looks natural. No suspicions." Felt the ground slip from beneath her. It was too much, too many coincidences. Recalling Emily's advice, she decided to get help finding the jeweler who had made the watch. The next day, Emily, using her connections, tracked down Alina Petrovna, the widow of a jeweler. The elderly woman lived in a small house on the outskirts of town. Concealing her anxiety, Laura told Alina about the vintage watch and asked if her late husband had ever made anything like it. Alina Petrovna was silent for a long time, absently fingering her prayer beads. "My husband made many custom pieces," she finally said in a soft voice. But one order troubled him greatly. He was very secretive in the months before his death. He said he was being threatened. Laura held her breath. "What was the order?" she asked, trying to hide her growing unease. "A watch," Alina Petrovna replied. "Vintage watches that needed modifications. The client insisted on a special clasp design, said it was crucial. A husband refused for a long time, but then he agreed. He was desperate for the money." "Who was the client?" Laura asked. Alina Petrovna shook her head. "He was very careful. He only said it was a very influential person." "How did he die?" Laura asked, trying to sound casual. "A heart attack," Alina Petrovna answered suddenly. "He never complained about his heart." Laura froze. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, forming a terrifying picture. Marcus, a mistress, a poisoned watch. The jeweler's death, everything pointed to Laura being the victim of a carefully orchestrated crime. Back home, Laura felt trapped. She knew Marcus was watching her every move. She had to act quickly and decisively. Late that night, while Marcus slept, Laura retrieved a flash drive with all the evidence she had collected. She stared at her husband's sleeping face, struggling to understand how she could have been so wrong about him. How she had missed the true man behind the mask of love and care. She knew she couldn't handle this alone anymore. She could no longer trust anyone except Emily. She called her and urgently asked to meet. "Emily, I need your help," Laura said, her voice trembling. When they met at a quiet cafe, Laura spoke in hushed tones. "Marcus wants to kill me." Emily listened quietly, not interrupting. When Laura finished, Emily took her hand and squeezed it tightly. "We need to go to the police," Emily said. "If you have evidence, we'll get justice." Laura nodded. She knew it was the only option. She couldn't live in fear anymore. She had to stop Marcus before he completed his cruel plan. First, she made backups of all of Marcus's correspondence emails with his mistress. Discussions about debts, strange online searches about painless poisons and treatments for nervous disorders. Each file, each detail, would become part of the evidence. Laura felt like an archaeologist, uncovering layers of deception instead of ancient artifacts. She reread Mikey's report from the pawn shop. Clearly stated, the vintage watch has been modified and contains a hidden mechanism with a poison. Mikey had attached magnified photos showing the tiny capillary in the clasp. Laura knew this wasn't enough for a court case. She needed an independent analysis. As always, Emily came through. She arranged for a toxicologist to analyze the substance in the watch. The 2 days of waiting felt like an eternity. Laura barely slept, constantly fearing that Marcus would catch on, that he would run away, or, worse, finish what he had started. Finally, Emily called with the news. The analysis confirmed the presence of a toxic substance in the watch. "It's thallium," Emily said, her voice grim. "Slow-acting poison that causes symptoms that can easily be mistaken for common ailments. Prolonged exposure leads to severe nervous system damage and, ultimately, death." Laura felt a chill run through her. Thallium. Everything made sense now. The dizziness, the weakness, the nausea wasn't random, was cold-blooded poisoning. Marcus had planned her death, disguising it as something natural. She recalled her conversation with the jeweler's widow, who had mentioned the odd order, the urgency, and the mysterious client who had refused to give his name. Laura borrowed Emily's phone and called the widow. "Hello, this is Laura," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We spoke about the vintage watch order." "Yes, I remember," the widow replied, her voice tinged with unease. "I need your help," Laura continued. "I need you to confirm to the police that Marcus placed that order." "My God," the widow whispered. "I suspected as much. He came to me the day after we spoke, offering money to keep quiet." "Thank you," Laura said, her heart racing. "Your testimony is crucial." With all the evidence in hand, the correspondence, the toxicology report, the widow's testimony, Laura knew it was time to act. She called the police and requested a meeting with an investigator. The next day, Laura sat in the office of Captain Dimitri, the investigator, and told him her story. Dimitri listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. He looked tired but professional, and Laura felt she could trust him. She laid all the evidence on the table: photos of the watch, the toxicology report, printed emails, and the widow's testimony. Captain Dimitri examined the documents carefully. "These are serious claims, Laura," he said after reviewing everything. "We'll need strong proof to make an arrest." "I have everything," Laura replied, meeting his gaze. "I know he tried to kill me, and I'm ready to prove it." Dimitri nodded. "We'll investigate thoroughly. If everything checks out, we'll take the necessary steps." The next few hours felt like they were stretching on forever. Laura stayed glued to her phone, anxiously waiting for an update. She worried Marcus would do something reckless, destroy evidence, or flee. Finally, around 6 p.m., the phone rang. It was Dimitri. "Laura, we've got your husband in custody," he said. "Come to the station. We need your formal statement." A sense of relief washed over Laura. It was finally happening. She was safe. At the police station, Laura gave a post. A police station, Laura gave a post. Look at this. And look at this. And we all know I've been exploring. And we all know I've been exploring that path. We've said sense of relief washed over Laura. It was finally so floralizing. I said it was be so recise. We said, community says to be so letter at. So we said, come with concase to see if you say a can li wa can war I can you so I can we can eat it with can on I so like you we see to call like you we can you we to see we to kasap to go kasaya get us kagridi see you I we get a suit to guy I with the key if we could eat with the wind sick if I for got can we the get sit in get the key it I would get when you I did a little bit comprehensive statement. She explained everything. The watch, her symptoms, Marcus's debts, his affair, and the jeweler's mysterious order. She answered Dimitri's questions with calm assurance. Meanwhile, Marcus was adamant in his denial. He claimed the watch was just a gift and he knew nothing about any poison. He insisted he loved Laura and would never hurt her. He said she was imagining things and had made everything up, but the evidence was undeniable. The toxicology report confirmed the presence of poison in the watch. The emails with his mistress, his financial troubles, and his motive for murder were all solid proof. The widow's testimony confirmed Marcus had placed the order for the altered watch. A few days later, Marcus was formally charged with attempted murder. He was arrested and placed in a detention facility. The investigation continued, and the police uncovered Marcus's deep involvement in fraud and connections to organized crime. They discovered he was buried in debt and had planned to collect life insurance money from Laura's death. They also learned the jeweler's death wasn't an accident. It had been orchestrated by Marcus to cover his tracks. Laura learned all this from the news. Sitting alone in her apartment, watching the TV, she felt a mix of anger and disgust. She couldn't believe she had shared her life with such a monster. The aftermath was hard for Laura. She struggled to recover from the trauma and sought therapy to help her heal. She moved to a new apartment, changed her job, and cut ties with people who reminded her of the past. She was determined to rebuild her life. A year later, Marcus's trial took place. He was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to a long prison term. Laura didn't attend the trial. She had no interest in seeing Marcus or wasting her emotions on him. She just wanted to leave him behind forever. After the trial, Laura treated herself to a new watch. Not a vintage one, but a modern, sleek, and reliable piece. As she strapped it on her wrist, she felt a new sense of freedom awakening within her. This watch was more than just an accessory. It symbolized that her time was now hers alone. She was free, she had survived, and now she was ready to embrace happiness again.